Hi. Hi, Justina.
Hi, Kayo.
How are you?
I'm really, really great. I'm super excited to be talking to you today and meeting the Brazilian community again. I would say it's probably one of my favorite communities that I have a really nice chance to interact with.
Well, welcome again. We were here in person last year, September. Today is a very special day. It's the second time that we are going to have like an English meetup for the Brazilian community. Before we start, I would just like to share something with the Brazilian community, and I guess this is the only time that I'm going to speak in Portuguese, which is basically a transparency to let the community know why we're doing this in English. Okay. Ah, então, pessoal, este evento é parte da nossa série chamada Hello World. Todo o conteúdo será apresentado em inglês e daqui a alguns dias o próprio YouTube vai oferecer para vocês uma legenda automática que vocês podem traduzir em português e selecionar tanto para ver em inglês ou em português, que é gerado automaticamente. Em todo caso, a gente se compromete a revisar, adicionar as legendas após alguns dias após a transmissão. Então, a gente agradece a sua compreensão e a gente pede seu feedback nesse formato. A sua opinião é muito importante para a gente, beleza? Então, let's go back to English. I was just letting everybody know like why we are doing this. Basically, it's the same content left and right. But hey, here we are. How are things in Germany?
Yeah, I would say things are good. Obviously, we all know about the recent events all around the world, and it's things are going back to normal, I would say, and also it has been really nice weather, especially over the past few weeks. Like it's really, really hot, quite unusually hot in Berlin. So yeah, lots of sun and just things are going back to normal as well in terms of COVID situation. So yeah, things are pretty good.
You know, I don't know if you watch it, Dark, the series on Netflix.
No, unfortunately.
You haven't? Yeah, it's a series on Netflix. It's about like going back in times and things like that. It's based in Germany. And I didn't know that Germans and like people there like to go to nature. There are many places to walk around. It's a really nature like forest things. I didn't know about that.
Oh yeah, and it's actually something that I have started doing way more during the lockdown as well. Just explore, because I'm based in Berlin. Just explore the surroundings and going to more nature kind of spots, forests and lakes, and it's really, really nice and beautiful, and it's also nice way to spend your time outside.
Yeah. Well, before we start, we're just starting the live streaming, so I guess we have like many people from different places around the world. Usually, in our events, we have like first an ice-breaking like conversation is the time that people can join the live streaming and watch with us, and after that, we're going to jump in the presentation, and finally, we're going to have some Q&A sections, questions or section. But we have like folks from Brasilia. Which is the capital of Brazil. Lapis, I don't know if you know Lapis, but it's like a college group that do lots of AI. They love Rasa. They use it a lot. There is Rocha Carla. She was here I guess, 2 weeks ago. Mitru, I don't know if I'm pronouncing right. Jorley, and yeah, I don't know how to pronounce that, honestly. But yeah, so before we start, I would like to do some like questions to you. One is related to developer relations. That's really unique position. I love this area, to be honest. But I wonder, like, what does like developer relations means to Rasa, and what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think you're totally right that it's quite unique position, and it really I do try to talk to as many developer advocates and people working in developer relations as much as I can in different companies. And I see that it really varies. In different companies, people do completely different things. So at Rasa, developer relations pretty much means working on improving developer experience and making sure that developers know how to build good AI assistants with Rasa open source tools. So that includes overall knowledge, knowing how to do it, understanding how things work under the hood, but also having lots of different ideas for what kind of assistants you can build. And this is what me and my team in developer relations team at Rasa, what we are focusing on. We are very heavily focused on education, which means that we spend a lot of our time creating technical tutorials. We're making a lot of videos. You can actually check out our YouTube channel as well. So if you just look up Rasa YouTube channel, you will definitely find it. So we are posting multiple videos there every week on different topics, from just more development-related things to even research-related topics, and going in depth under the hood on how, for example, machine learning works in Rasa. But then at the same time, we also want to give some kind of ideas for our community, what kind of assistance they can build. So that's why we also spend quite a bit of our time just tinkering around and hacking and trying out different ideas and trying to build something that maybe hasn't built before, and just testing out things, and then also sharing those insights with our community as well. And then on top of that, developer relations at Rasa is pretty much the core of community growth initiatives. So we want to make sure that people who join Rasa community, that they are happy, that they want to stay in our community, that they hopefully would want to contribute to Rasa open source as well. And again, that they know how to do it, that they feel excited to do it. So we do have lots of different community programs. One of them is a contributor program where we help our community members to grow as contributors. So, for example, to start contributing and then grow into kind of Rasa superstars that we call Rasa heroes and superheroes. So people that contribute to Rasa multiple times, and based on that contributor program, there are lots of different perks that come with it, like swag and lots of different other interactions, for example, with our team and everything else. So it's really all about developer experience and community growth that we are focusing on at Rasa in developer relations.
You mentioned about the superheroes things. You also have like the Humans Behind the Bots series, which is a really interesting way to it's a spotlight, right, for folks. What is that series about? How can anyone be part of that? Or is there other way to contribute or become like a superhero? Super Rasa hero, I guess.
So we definitely want to make sure that people that are doing great job in our community, who are putting in a lot of work and time into anything really, it can be code, it can be creating tutorials, it can be giving talks, running meetups, lots of different things. We want to make sure that these people get recognition, that their work and achievements are highlighted. So we do have, as one of the ways how we want to highlight those achievements, is that we do have an interview series with our heroes and superheroes, and we post those interviews on our blog. So whenever someone becomes a Rasa superhero, but also that applies to Rasa heroes as well, our community manager, Emma, she just schedules an interview with the chosen person for that specific month, or just the interview that we want to have. And then we just have a really nice conversation about what kind of things they're working on, how did they get into the community, and we just really want to learn more about these amazing people that sometimes we get used to seeing their GitHub handles or just their picture and a name on the community forum, but it's really nice to learn more about them, like what kind of things they're working on, their hobbies, and things like that. So really anyone that contributes to Rasa, they have a chance to be highlighted there. And all it takes is just to start contributing, and then our team is very helpful and willing to help our contributors grow into Rasa heroes and superheroes. And to get there, you just simply have to be active in community and do multiple contributions. But again, this is where we at Rasa team really help people to get there and grow as contributors.
Well, it seems that it's a lot of work, but also it's lots of fun getting to know everybody, helping people to use Rasa and to create like these products.
Yeah, but I would say it's something that everyone is really excited about at Rasa, because really community is the core of what we do at Rasa. We do build products for our community, and we want to make sure that they can use the open source software for their assistance, that they can build good projects. So everything is centered around the community. We listen to our community. We constantly ask for feedback, and that's why whenever we see someone contributing or just also maybe just being excited about Rasa as a project, it's really the best kind of pay for all this work. So yeah, it really goes both ways.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Rasa. I mean, of course, we're going to talk about Rasa today, but I guess that sometimes our parents, like Brazilians, we have these parents things, like we ask about families and stuff. How do you explain like Rasa for non-technical folks or who are curious, like what is this? Like Rasa, it's an hour, something like that?
Yeah, it's actually a funny fact. So I'm originally from Lithuania, and actually Rasa is a Lithuanian name. Like quite popular name.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
So whenever I mention that I work at Rasa or use Rasa for something, my Lithuanian friends are like, what? Because they think that I'm speaking about a human. I think the easiest way to explain what Rasa is for a non-technical person who has no idea what even like chatbots are is that it's computer software that allows humans to talk to machines or computers or any other apps out there in a simple human language. So you can ask your computer to do things by describing the task in a simple human language, and it can actually talk to you and have a conversation with you. So just bridging the gap between technology and humans through conversations and software.
Well, for us that are more familiar with Rasa, sometimes we have these conversations like, it does NLP, but also talks a lot about NLU. And many people, they don't get like, what is the difference between those two things? When I go to the Rasa website, it talks a lot about like contextual assistance and talks more about NLU rather than NLP. I mean, both are kind of parts of the same ideas, but what are the difference between these two areas?
Yeah, like those two terms, NLU and NLP, I do see them being used. Usually been speaking about the same things. And usually it is about like understanding or parsing language, but there are quite a few differences actually. So NLP overall, just like this acronym, stands for natural language processing, which pretty much means that you use NLP to allow your computer program to pretty much understand the structure of the input, and it's really about parsing the language. It can be extracting specific features of a message, looking for specific patterns in the message, and so on. While natural language understanding, which is also abbreviated as NLU, it is really about understanding. So what is the actual meaning of this message? So in a way, those two things, they kind of work hand in hand. So for example, you could probably build a simple chatbot with just NLP and some rules, for example. So you would just pretty much have some simple rules to parse user messages, extract some specific details from those messages just from features perspective, like maybe what kind of words are in the sentence, what kind of symbols, engrams, or anything else that you're looking for in those messages. And then you can write some rules, and you probably would still build a simple bot that would be capable of having a simple conversation. But then if you want your assistant to understand and handle the context, and this is where those contextual AI assistants come into play, this is where you need NLU. This is where you want to make sure that assistant is not only able to parse user messages, but actually understand them in a way that it can handle context, that it can remember details that the user provided about whatever the conversation is, and that an assistant is able then to use those details to maybe even drive the conversation. So yeah, I would say they are similar in a way because they both deal with language. But yeah, one is really just about the structure of the text or messages, and another one is about NLU is about understanding and using that information to have conversations.
Mm. Is it fun to work in like an open source and also AI company? Like two big interesting things combining together.
Oh, definitely. For me, it is for sure. I would say I spent most of my career working in startups or smaller companies, and I really enjoy it. It's fast-paced, so we are iterating on things really quickly, and it's like one of the kind of values at Rasa that we do want to iterate quickly because we want to ship products to our developers as soon as we can. So things change quite fast, and we have to be able to adapt to this and handle that. But at the same time, it's such a nice opportunity to learn a lot, and I think the best thing about working at a startup as well is that you do tend to wear a lot of different hats. You learn lots of different skills, and it's just really a lot of fun to just build a product from ground up and see community use it. And then open source as well is really such an amazing field because again, community is such a big part of that. And what I like the most about it probably is this constant stream of feedback. I really like that people who are using open source software, they are really vocal. So whenever something doesn't work, they will definitely open an issue about it. If they need a new feature, they will propose that feature. Or if something is great as well, they usually share those insights with us. And it's really so much fun to work on products and Rasa overall when there's constant feedback from the actual users, and it really gives us an amazing opportunity to constantly make improvements based on what our community asks us. And then obviously AI, I think most people who are in this field will agree that it's fascinating and it's fun. And probably it's same as working in a startup, things are just evolving so quickly, and new models are being released. Probably everyone, most of people in NLP heard of GPT-3. It's this huge thing right now. So it's just really fun to see things changing, growing, evolving, improving, and just really seeing more and more applications of AI in our everyday lives. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, I can see that you're really excited about that. It's really fun. It's a really interesting area. Well, shall we start? Is that okay for you?
Yes. Yep.
We have
I'm
many
ready.
people watching us, like Priscila, Ricardo Poppe, he was here with us, you, Julio Prada, uh, Hamiyane, I guess. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I'm sorry for that. Uh, Gabriel, he said, like, thank you for the explanation. And Rafael is here with us. Rafael is the one who connected me with Rasa, and that's how I got to know Alex, Alan, and everybody. Thank you, Rafa. And he's here with us today. So there are some things that I would like to share about Bots Brazil first, which basically, just to introduce you, like Bots Brazil is a community of people. Of course, it's not only bots; it's also people. We are interested in bots, conversational UI, and artificial intelligence. We were created in 2016 to promote discussions in Portuguese. Like many Brazilians, they don't have the privilege of speaking English. So we saw there's this global discussion, but we were not part of that. So we wanted to translate this and bring the community closer to the global conversations, right? Today we have about 12,000 members in our community. We have a blog that we share many things, and we host more than 40 events in different cities around Brazil, and also in San Francisco last year, which I met Alex and Alan too. Uh, so every event that we do, we try to promote people and make the opportunity to everybody get connected. This is the one that I get to know Alex. He's somewhere here. I don't know if I can find him, but somewhere. I guess this is here in the back. Uh, yeah, on this event we have like 38 countries, like people from 38 different countries. So it was a great opportunity to get to know everybody. It unfortunately we're passing through this really strange time, but we're going to pass through this. We're going to get stronger after that. One last thing, though, is that every event we do, we like to share our code of conduct. It's really important for our community. It helps us to keep everybody safe because our goal as a community is to create like an inviting and safe environment to anyone to share, learn, collaborate, get to know everybody, do networking, and we have lots of fun on that. But it's important to mention these things that rule all events. So we don't like to share. We don't like to have harassment, bullying, or any appropriate conversations. We do not tolerate that. We do not try to promote things that are going to help people to break the laws or trying to do wrong things that is not acceptable. Everybody, like the stakeholders, needs to follow this guidance, even us. We ask everybody to take care of the space that welcomes you. We are now on YouTube, so we ask you to help us to keep the vibe going and keep things fun. Lastly, but not least, everything that we try to do is to share content and to help everybody to get to know something. Today, Justina, of course, she's going to talk about Rasa, but forget about the promotion, whatever. She's here to share with us. This is important because sometimes people are just like, what am I watching here? We just want to help you to see that. We are trying to help you to learn something. If you think that we had a problem or we did something wrong, please send us an email. We want to improve ourselves, and it's really important in your opinion. Uh, why we're doing this? Because if you saw our YouTube, if you go see all the other videos that we have on our YouTube channel, all of them are going to be in Portuguese. This is a series that we wanted to connect us Brazilians with the world. So we started to have these opportunities to invite people from different countries to share something with us. Today, Justina, she's from Lithuania, but she's in Berlin, and we're going to be speaking in English. But we welcome the community or anyone to please share some questions, to leave a comment, or like Ricardo, he said, share a comment. Folks from Lapis, they already sent like a question. So we welcome you to share your questions and to be part of this event too. If you don't know, if you're not feeling confident in writing in English, that's fine. I speak Portuguese too. I can help you with that. So we are here to help everybody. So just share whatever you like to with the community too. So I guess this is it, Justina. Let's go to your presentation.
Yeah, I'm all good. I'm all set.
Let's do it. So I'm sharing your screen now. I guess you can see it, but it's your window on the live streaming now. Have fun, and I'm going to be in the backstage.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, so first of all, hello to everyone who are watching the stream. I'm super grateful for all the everyone who's watching, and also already some people are leaving comments. And I just wanted to encourage everyone just throughout my presentation, if you have any questions, ideas, suggestions, just please leave them in the comments, and I will definitely read them all, and I will try to answer as many questions as I can. Yeah, before I get started, I just also wanted to say again that I'm really excited to be on BOTS Brazil event again. Last year, I had a chance to fly all the way to São Paulo and talk at BOTS Brazil conference and meet Caio in person and meet some Rasa community members in person, and overall just see how the community of chatbots looks like in Brazil. And I really have to say it was the highlight of my year last year. So I'm super happy and excited to be on BOTS Brazil events again. Today, I would like to talk about conversation-driven development and just really dive into why it is important, and also start with what it is in the first place, and why should you think about conversation-driven development when building your AI assistants. So hopefully, after my talk, you will identify some of the things in your development workflows that hopefully you can improve if you are already working on AI assistant, or maybe you will learn something new and implement some of these ideas in your development workflow if you are just getting started with your project. So let's get started. At first, let's see, I just wanted to do a very quick overview of what Rasa is about and what we care about. It's going to be really short, but I just wanted to emphasize that Rasa is a startup, as I have mentioned, and we are based in Berlin and San Francisco, and we are working on building a standard infrastructure for conversational AI. So we are building open source software for developers to use to build their own conversational AI assistants. And we do that through championing open source tools, because we believe that if you want to be a standard infrastructure for conversational AI, you do have to be open source, because it gives so much freedom for developers to really adapt framework to their own needs, make improvements, add additional components. So we really big believers in open source. And also, as I have mentioned previously, the core of open source projects, in my opinion, is community. And at Rasa, community plays a very big role. And we do focus on nurturing our community of makers. We want to make sure that people who are using Rasa and or just really interested in conversational AI field, that they have really the best experience and the best tools out there to build AI assistants that they want to build. And also, we are working on shipping applied research to solve real-world problems. So at Rasa, we have a team of researchers who are spending their time researching new ways to tackle different and challenging NLU and dialogue management problems. But at the same time, we want to make sure that every single thing that we are working on at Rasa and researching ends up in Rasa products for developers to use. So we do write research papers, but we also make sure that all of our findings and improvements are usable for developers as actual tools that they can use to solve their problems that they're working on. And overall, there is one big mission that Rasa as a company tries to achieve, which is to empower all makers around the world to create AI assistants that work for everyone. And this statement kind of covers 2 points. One is that we want to enable pretty much anyone to build their own AI, regardless of their background, regardless of their experience, and we are constantly working on making this development experience easier, just make sure that people can easier build these applications. And then on the other side of spectrum are the users. So we want to make this gap between technology and the users of that technology as small as possible, and we would like to achieve this really nice goal of bringing people to technology much easier. So, for example, elderly who are maybe not that tech savvy, just imagine if everyone could talk to computers or even mobile phones and apps in just simple human language, how many opportunities that opens to not only those who are familiar with chatbots and technology, but also those who are a little bit left out. So these are the things that we care about at Rasa, and this is why we work on this software and tools that we build for developers. And as of now, we built two main products at Rasa. So I will mention them throughout my presentation quite a few times, so just so that we all know what I'm talking about. One of them is Rasa Open Source, which allows developers to build their natural language understanding models and dialogue management models, and kind of put them all into an actual assistant that is capable of handling conversations, handling context. And then when it comes to this next step of including the feedback of real users or real testers into your development workflow, which I will also expand on a little bit more why this is important. This is when our still quite new-ish tool called Rasa X comes in play, because Rasa X is built on top of Rasa Open Source, and it is designed to allow developers to take their assistant to the next level. So when you have the first minimal viable assistant built with Rasa Open Source, so assistant which is capable of handling conversations and doesn't break that easy, you should share your assistant with real people to talk to. So Rasa X actually makes it very easy to achieve that, and then to have access to the conversations that real people have with your assistant, and it allows you to learn from those conversations and then decide on what kind of improvements to make in your assistant based on what you learn. So I will actually have a small demo of Rasa X at the end of my presentation, so you will also see how that works in practice. But now I would like to actually dive into the main topic that I wanted to talk about, which is related to the conversation-driven development with Rasa and maybe other tools. So I would like to start with discussing a little bit the notion of 5 levels of conversational AI. It is something that we talk about at Rasa quite a lot, and it's a topic and notion that we care about quite a lot at Rasa, because it really defines overall the evolution of conversational AI, and it helps us to better understand what is the state of conversational AI right now and what kind of steps we can make to improve the tools that we are creating and that people can use to build good AI assistants. So we do have two sides of the spectrum here again. So we have end user, and then we have a developer. And when we talk about conversational AI overall, in those different levels, there are things that we do expect, that users expect from those different levels of AI assistance. So, for example, I will talk about that level 1 are very simple assistants, and level 5 they are these adaptive assistants that can adapt to the actual user in terms of how they talk. But then there are different expectations for a developer as well, and there are specific things that developers should keep in mind when they want to push from, let's say, level 3 to level 4 AI assistants. So there are just lots of additional things that should be taken into consideration and included into the development workflows in order to achieve this shift from simple assistants to more advanced assistants. So now I would like to just go through these levels also fairly quickly, just so that we know what is the overall scene of AI assistants and how we see the structure of 5 levels at Rasa. So I will talk through these levels of AI assistance through a simple example of banking assistance. So just because this is what you will see on the screen. So level 1 assistants are those very basic, simple bots that probably you can't even call chatbots because there is not really much chat going on. So those can be notification kind of chatbots or something like even on your command line where user would have to put in, let's say, if they want to get a mortgage quote, they would have to put in parameters like amount, duration, and then they would have to know how to provide this information. And level 1 assistants, those basic bots, they put all of the work to the end user, because end user has to know, first of all, how to use the tool overall, the framework, whatever platform the bot runs on, but also they have to know how to provide this information in the right format to get specific answer that they are looking for. And even the forms that you find on websites, they can also probably can be considered as level 1 assistance, where you just have to fill in specific form. And it's just another example of that, where user has to do all the work, providing the details, but also they have to know what is the right format, what is the right way to provide this information. So there is so much burden on the user to handle all of these things and put in so much thought in using the application. And then when we think about other subsequent levels of assistance, we do see this as a progression of lowering this burden on the user, and it's more on the developer and assistant side to then figure out what is the best way to help the user without requiring them to know everything about the assistant itself, how it works, and what is the best way to talk to this assistant, but also to make it easier for an assistant to just be more adaptive and figure out what the user needs without requiring user to be very explicit about what they are asking. So level 2 assistants can be considered as basic chatbots. Probably most of the assistants that are out there today could definitely fall under this category still. So these are assistants that can have actual conversation. They can ask questions for specific details, and they can take those details into consideration and use those details for running a specific action. But then again, there is still quite a lot of expectation for the user to mostly follow the path that the assistant is setting. So usually in level 2 assistance, if the user asks some follow-up questions or provides the information in a bit different way than expected, those assistants break, and user experience is usually not the greatest overall. And then level 3 assistants, they have context. And this is quite a big shift from these level 2 and especially level 1 assistants. So here, users can ask follow-up questions, and assistants are much more flexible to handle those less predefined conversations. They can answer follow-up questions. They can, assistants themselves can ask for additional questions to clarify what the user is asking, to better understand what they are looking for. So this is where we can see that assistant is taking more responsibility to make sure that user achieves their goal that they had at the beginning of the conversation, and it's not as much on the user side to make sure that this whole conversation works. And then we have level 4 assistants, which are also quite a big shift from even level 3 assistants. So this is where users don't even have to be completely specific about what they are looking for. So in this example, you can see that users simply describe their situation, that the kids are going to college and they want to downsize, and then assistant figures out what is the best way to continue the conversation without needing all the details, and it's much more contextual, and it's simply able to adapt to these less specific conversations in comparison to level 3 and level 2 assistants. And level 5 assistants, we call them adaptive assistants, which means that they are capable of adapting to the actual user. So, for example, if user describes their situation in a very great detail, so then the answer that an assistant provides is also really thought out and in-depth and detailed. And for example, if user asks for a quick question that needs just a very quick answer, an assistant should also be able to adapt to that and provide those kind of answers. There are lots of different things that should come into the development process to be able to achieve level 4, level 5 assistance. But probably one of the most important things that we think that will help developers to go beyond these level 1, 2, and 3 AI assistants is actually looking at real conversations that users have with the assistant and learning from those conversations. So the main shift in developers' mind that has to happen is that it's not really about writing training examples by hand and simulating this example training data or auto-generating training data, but it's really about learning from real humans, how they talk, how they communicate, and using that knowledge to improve the assistance and allowing them to learn these kind of things and adapt eventually to real users. And this is why this conversation-driven development is such a big topic right now, at least at Rasa. This is why we care about it so much. And this is why I do want to now focus on this topic specifically. So to better understand and explain what conversation-driven development is, I actually would like to start with what is the opposite of conversation-driven development. And I did want to have this slide in place and talk about this because hopefully while I talk about these things, you will be able to really think about your own development workflows and how you work on developing your AI assistants. And maybe you will actually identify yourself in some of these things that I will cover. And it's great because that means that we can learn something and hopefully improve some of these workflows and allow you to build better assistants. So one of the first things that is definitely the opposite of conversation-driven development is focusing on developing your assistant for months and not including feedback from real users and testers. And it's something that is incredibly tempting to do when you're working on AI assistant. Me personally, I worked on quite a few AI assistants myself before even joining Rasa as a company. And I can really relate to this statement because I guess when you're working on conversational AI assistants, you want to make sure that they work well before you give them to real users because you just want to provide the best user experience out there. But in reality, it's kind of the opposite that you should do. You should think of how you can involve the feedback from real world as soon as possible to the development process, because learning from how real people will talk to your assistant is really the best kind of information that you can use to improve your assistants, which we will talk in more detail in a few seconds. Then another thing is that is opposite of conversation-driven development is only looking at top-level metrics and not the conversations themselves. I see quite a lot of developers when they are building their AI assistants picking some high-level metrics. For example, it can be number of conversations that an assistant handles, or what are the most popular intents that an assistant gets, and then focusing on these metrics to, first of all, evaluate evaluate how good the assistant is, but then thinking about should a developer make any changes to an assistant or not. And again, these metrics, obviously they are good and they are helpful, and I would say definitely good to have, but especially in the early development stages, conversations are the best source of information, again, like how an assistant performs, to what kind of improvements could be made to an assistant to improve their performance. And then another big thing is auto-generating training data that doesn't really reflect how real users would talk to your assistant. I had a chance to work with quite a few developers on bigger projects, projects that eventually were shipped to production. And I know that especially when you're just getting started and prototyping your assistant, training data is quite a big burden, because it's not just something that you can find on the web and use for your project. And a lot of AI assistants, when they are built, the development process starts with either typing some example training examples by hand. Over time, I noticed that community built quite a few really good tools that help with the auto-generating training data. But then again, there is a great danger that those examples that are auto-generated, they don't reflect the real world, and they follow the same predefined structure that a developer has to predefine. And it's really difficult to build assistants that scale using those kind of approaches. And the last one, which is also really important, and what would be considered as opposite of conversation-driven development, is pushing changes to production without running tests. I would say here is also where a shift in developers' mind has to happen, because when people talk about software, I guess it's quite natural to also talk about testing, about continuous integration, continuous deployment. And well, AI assistants are no different. So leaving this step out and just making changes to your assistant and pushing everything to production without testing anything is a very big danger, and definitely not recommended thing overall, and not considered as part of conversation-driven development. So what conversation-driven development is then? So this notion overall, and why we started speaking about it at Rasa, it came from things that we learned from our community and ourselves working on conversational AI assistants. So if you have worked on AI assistant before, you know that it's hard. It's hard to build good AI assistants because when you are working on conversational AI, you are dealing with real humans and real human language. And you probably also know that it's just simply impossible to anticipate everything that users will say. And it's really challenging to build assistants that can handle lots of different inputs, lots of different skills and things like that. And then just by looking at how our community members are developing their AI assistants, we definitely noticed that prototyping and building the first simple version of your assistant is actually easy. You can build something that works fairly well quite quickly, and it doesn't require a lot of data or lots of advanced engineering. But the hard part is this next step when you want to ship something into production and open your assistant up to thousands, hundreds of thousands, and hopefully millions of users. Because this is where you have to make sure that your assistant scales and that it can actually handle inputs from different users, that an assistant doesn't break if the conversation takes a little bit different turn than you thought it would when you were developing the assistant in the first place. So lots of different challenges come at this stage between prototyping and deployment. the main reason why we want to talk about conversation-driven development and why we want to make sure that our developers that are building their assistants also think about this is, first of all, we believe that conversation-driven development help to build better conversational AI. There are lots of very important things that are necessary to build good applications that I will cover as well later on in my presentation. But also, since we went through quite a lot of learnings ourselves while developing, for example, Rasa open source software, interacting with our community members and seeing how people build their conversational AI assistants, and also building AI assistants ourselves, we learned so much. So it's important to have those conversations and share the learnings with wider community to make sure that they can build good AI assistants without having to learn all of these lessons the hard way. So overall, conversation-driven development can be described as a 6-action process. So those 6 actions are share, review, annotate, test, track, and fix. And I would like to go through all of them one by one and just talk about them in more detail. So the first one is share, and I guess I would have to say that's probably one of the most important ones. So it doesn't matter what kind of assistant you build, and I have to say that probably it really doesn't matter how long you have spent developing your assistant in isolation. By isolation, I mean without including real users to test your assistant. Users will always surprise you in how they talk to your assistant, in what kind of things they say, in what kind of questions they ask. So that's why it is incredibly important to involve these real users into your development process as soon as possible, because if you spend months and months being the only developer of your assistant, and you are the only person, or maybe there is, let's say, a handful of people generating training data, I'm almost 100% certain that once you give your assistant to real users, things will break, and you will see that, wow, actually things, the conversations that people have with your assistant are really different than maybe you were anticipating. So if you follow conversation-driven development best practices, you would build first version of your assistant, which is good in a way that it doesn't break very easily. So an assistant should be able to obviously handle some conversations, the most common conversations that you imagine users will have with your assistant, and then involve real people. So you can have, let's say, some people as early testers who would talk to your assistant, and you would be able to look into what kind of conversations they have with your assistant and make changes based on that, based on what you learn from those conversations, and do that as an iterative process. So you share your assistants, you get some feedback, you share again, you get feedback, and improve your assistant through that. So this is incredibly important. Then the next step is to review. So when you share your assistant with real testers, for example, it is incredibly important to actually look through those conversations that they have with your assistant, because again, everyone, when it comes to machine learning, people say that it's so important to have real world data or to test your assistant on real world data sets. Well, when it comes to conversational AI, those real conversations between real users and your assistant is this best real-world data set that you can get. So if you can collect those conversations, you should definitely take time and read through those conversations and see where things go maybe a little bit differently than you anticipated while creating your training data in the first place. You should observe how people talk, so those inputs of the user, how do they look like? Maybe there is something that you can learn and use that information to improve your NLU training data. Maybe there is something that you can learn about the actual conversation flow, and maybe you should go back to your conversation design and change how you anticipated things there. So it's really important to spend time and look through those real conversations. So instead of getting caught up to those high-level metrics that I mentioned previously, look at conversations as gold that you can use to learn the most from and make the best improvements for your assistant. The next step is to annotate. So you have the data, you have the real conversations between real users and your assistant, and instead of then relying on scripting and generating this synthetic training data in the later stages of the development, you should leverage the real-world data that you are getting from your users. So look through those conversations, look through the inputs that users are typing in and sending to your assistant, and why not just label them and add them to your training data? And this is a really, really great way to enhance your maybe manually generated training data in the first place with those real-world examples. And this is really the best way to scale your assistant to wide audience of users and make sure that your system is capable to understand different kind of inputs, and that it's that your models are not biased towards specific structure of user inputs and so on. Testing is incredibly important, and I touched on this a little bit already. So professional teams, they don't ship applications without tests, and that's why AI assistant should not be any different. You should always think about how you can test your assistant from the perspective of, for example, just running end-to-end tests on your on the actual assistant conversations to evaluate if your NLU models are performing well, if your dialogue management models are performing well, and especially when you are making changes to your assistant, do they still work? Do those conversations that you thought as the most important conversations and designed them while working on the development of your assistant, do they still work? And another important thing about testing is making sure that you have some kind of continuous integration in place to make sure that all the changes that you're making to your assistant, that they are reviewed before they are pushed into production. So you should definitely think about maybe how you can connect your assistant to some kind of, let's say, Git server, where you could open a PR for every major change that you're making to your assistant, and that those kind of things would be tested and checked before they are merged and pushed into production. Tracking as well is incredibly important. So I did mention that I see developers using a lot of metrics when it comes to evaluating their assistants. So I would say to evaluate how good your assistant is, you should definitely come up with some kind of proxy metric that you could use to evaluate how conversations go. Are they successful? Are they not? This kind of thing will definitely depend on what kind of assistant you're building. But for example, if it's a customer services assistant, maybe checking if the user got back to customer services agent after speaking to your assistant would be a good proxy metric to use. So maybe if the user didn't approach real human after speaking to a bot, maybe it's an indicator that user got their questions answered and that they achieved the goal that they had when they started speaking to your assistant. So tracking these kind of things is extremely important because you can definitely learn a lot from conversations that are considered unsuccessful, and there are lots of good things that you can do with conversations that are successful. So being able to mark those conversations and tracking them, how let's say the number of unsuccessful conversations, is it increasing, is it decreasing over time, is a really, really good data to collect about the performance of your assistant. And fix, quite important and definitely very probably obvious step. So as you study the conversations and observe that things go well, things go bad, you will hopefully find things to fix about your assistant, and you should definitely find something to fix about your assistant all the time. So there are lots of different things that you can do to improve your assistant. So for example, the conversations that went well, that you marked as successful, they are perfect candidates to use them for your tests. So definitely include them in your test data set, so that whenever you are testing your system next time, you have examples of how a good conversation should go, and you can test your assistant against them. And then you can also spot a lot of different things about overall performance of your assistant. So for example, if you have some custom actions in your assistant, are users happy with like what those actions do? Are users achieving their goal in the first place? And you can definitely observe these kind of things through reading through the conversations. And this is just a really great opportunity to either go back to your training data and change something about how you annotate your training data, or fix something in your code to improve the performance of your assistant and overall improve the user experience. So this is how conversation-driven development looks in theory. So these are 6 steps that I described in such a simple and quite linear progression, but we all know that in practice things usually are a little bit more complicated, and it's definitely not that much different for conversation-driven development in practice. So in reality and in real development process, this is how things usually look like, that you will find yourself jumping through different stages and actions, and it's something that you should expect. And I would say that if you find yourself going through these 6 steps in a very linear process, you should think that probably something is not really right about your development process, because just like in software development, the same for AI assistants, you do one iteration on, let's say, sharing your assistant, getting some input from real users, then you go back, fix things, change something in the annotation, then maybe you will want to go back and reshare your assistant, get another batch of input from real users, and then going back to fixing everything else. So it's usually not that linear process, and again, it's something that is natural and something that you should actually expect while working on your assistant. Since there are so many different steps and things to take into consideration when you want to build assistants that are good, that follow conversation-driven development practices, you will probably notice that there are so many different skills that are necessary for your assistant to be usable and reach the users. So you should definitely think about what kind of skills you need in your team who is working on your assistant. From our own experience in helping developers to build AI assistants, we have noticed that usually teams need people with very different skill sets. For example, you might need data scientists to work on the models and improving how machine learning side of things is performing. You might need data analysts, data engineers to evaluate how your assistant is performing and how it is improving maybe your business. You might need conversation designers to best craft the conversations and overall the experience that users will have when they talk to your assistant. And some things need technical skills, some things need a very good understanding of the user, of the field. Usually building assistants that are shipped into production, they usually require a combination of different skills. So it's something that you should definitely think about as well when you're building your team. We do actually think about this quite a lot at Rasa as well. And here I would like to encourage everyone as well to check out our blog, because we actually had a few blog posts covering these topics about how best design your team for working on conversational AI projects. And also, I would just be really curious to hear about your teams. So in the comments, if you feel comfortable, if you could share about like the structure of your team that is working on your AI assistants and the conversational AI projects, I would be really, really curious to hear about how it looks like. Now I would like to show you and talk a little bit more about Rasa X because I'm from Rasa, and as I have mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, we do want to make sure that developers have good experience when working on their conversational AI assistants, and we definitely saw that it's quite challenging to implement all of these conversation-driven development steps in the development workflow because it actually does require some specific engineering things, and there has to be a lot of work that has to be put into completing all of these steps. And as a result, we worked on this tool called Rasa X, which is pretty much designed to make it easier for teams to follow the conversation-driven development best practices, and the features that are inside this tool are very oriented towards conversation-driven development. I will show you actually a quick demo so that you can see how it works, but I just wanted to also clarify once again how Rasa X works with Rasa open source. So Rasa X is a tool that sits on top of Rasa open source. So with Rasa open source, you would build, let's say, the first version of your assistant that is in the, let's say, early-ish development stage, where your team is working on creating the training data, testing the models, and doing the first iterations of your assistant. And then once your assistant is good enough to handle the most important conversations, which we kind of also call happy path conversations, so those simple conversations where a user would usually follow the lead of an assistant and provide the information as assistant asks for that conversation. The next step would be to incorporate some real feedback from real users. And this is where Rasa X becomes really handy, because with Rasa X, you can actually share your assistant with real testers or real users very easily. And it's a framework that allows you to review the conversations and learn from those conversations and make changes to it. Also an important thing to mention that Rasa X is a free tool. It's not open source, at least as of now, but it is completely free for community to use. And also all the data and all the conversations that users have with your assistant, they all stay on your servers. None of it ever gets to Rasa. We don't see any conversations that users have with your assistant. So it's everything is deployed on your own servers. You run it, you own it, and yeah, this is how things work. And before I show the demo, I just wanted also to quickly touch base on different ways to run Rasa X. One of them is local mode, and another one is server mode. So we have local mode for Rasa X to give you a chance to easily familiarize with Rasa X, test out the features, see how it works in practice. And it's actually a really good way to maybe build the first prototype of your assistant and share it with, let's say, your colleagues or friends, and get this first input of feedback. And then once you are ready to take your assistant to the next level, so for example, to continue on development process and collaborate on developing your assistant with your colleagues, or especially later on when you want to deploy your assistant in production, this is where server mode for Rasa X is recommended, so that it scales and that you can actually save the conversations in a production database instead of local database, and that you can leverage Git integration, which will give you access to continuous integration aspects of the development as well. So yeah, so now I actually would like to do a very quick demo, and I will do that demo on local mode as well, just to keep things simple, but just to give you a taste of how Rasa X looks like and how it works. So Rasa X looks like a fairly simple UI. And to use Rasa X, again, you would need to build your assistant at first with Rasa open source. So there will have to be some kind of assistant that you have running, in my case, on my local machine. And for this demo, I'm actually using one of the Rasa starter packs that I also would like to quickly mention. It's something that we also want to provide to our community. So here I have financial demo starter pack. So it's a financial services example bot that you can find on Rasa HQ. GitHub, and you can take it, you can use it. You can either use this as an example to explore different features of Rasa, but also you can use it as maybe the basis of your own assistant. So it's completely open source. Anyone can use it, and I'm using it for my demo today as well. So it's a simple bot that can answer questions about, let's say, your account balance, or that you can use to pay off credit card. Obviously, all of these examples are demo examples, but maybe you can take it and turn it into a real assistant that does all of those cool things. So if you have a basic assistant built with Rasa open source, and you want to include real input from real users, this is where you should use Rasa X. So on Rasa X, you can do lots of different things, from just testing your assistant. So for example, I can have a small conversation with my assistant. I will just type in the message hello. And so my assistant responds here, and then this is where I can see overall how the conversation goes. And in a fairly simple UI, I can see how my NLU model is making predictions. So for example, for every input, I can see the predictions for the intent and what is the confidence for the specific intent. I can also see the same things for dialogue manager model. I can see what kind of predictions my dialogue manager model is making, which actions are predicted, and so on. Yeah, I can just simply talk to my assistant, and also maybe generate some additional training data, and save those conversations to then later on improve my assistant as well. But the most important thing, probably, or the most important feature about Rasa X, and why I think you should at least give it a try, is sharing your assistant with real testers. So if I go to a Conversations tab of Rasa X, I can find an icon which says Share with Guest Testers. So if I click on this, I can provide some details about my assistant. For example, I will call it Financial Assistant. And I can provide a description, something like, check it out. And if I click generate link, I simply get a link to my assistant. Now, since I'm running Rasa X on my local machine, this is why you can see that it's running on localhost. But for, let's say, for a demo purposes, I can either use ngrok, for example, and I think maybe I'll just show it with localhost, but you can just simply launch ngrok on the same port 5002, and you will be able to share this assistant with anyone outside of your network. But just for the demo purposes, I will copy this to my clipboard, and I will open a new incognito page here. And then this is what users will see when they click on this link. So it's a simple chat UI. Users will not need to install anything or set up anything, and they should be able to talk to your assistant immediately. So again, just for the demo, I will type in hello, and then I can talk to my assistant. So this is what it can do. So let's say I would like to pay off my credit card. And this is how the conversations would go. Now, this is great because it's so easy to share your assistant with people that you would like to test your assistant. But the real beauty is in actually then seeing those conversations. So if I go back to my Rasa X UI, you can see that I have this Conversations tab. It's the same tab where I found the Share with Real Testers icon. All conversations that users will have with your assistant that you share them with, they will be here. And then what you can do is you can review those conversations and learn something from them. Actually, if I refresh this page quickly, yeah, so this was the latest conversation that I had in that chat UI that opened when I clicked the link. So what you can do here is you can read through conversations, you can look into how people talk to your assistant, and learn what kind of improvements you can make to your assistant. So this is really important. Yeah.
Sorry. Can you make a little bit bigger? I guess your monitor is 4K, right?
Yes. Is it better?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
Thank you.
If not, just let me know. I can make it even bigger as well. So yeah, so you can review those conversations, you can flag specific messages that maybe you would like to look at them a little bit later. You can also create tags, and this is where, if you remember when I covered coming up with a specific proxy metric to evaluate the actual conversations, you can tag those conversations to review them later. So you can, for example, create a new tag with any kind of tag, let's say review later, or it can be anything. It can be your proxy metric or anything else. And I can create this tag, and then those conversations will be tagged with this specific tag. You can then use filters to search conversation by specific tag, and it just makes the whole process of reviewing those conversations and evaluating those conversations a lot easier. And you can also mark specific conversations as reviewed as well, so that you don't have to look into the conversations multiple times, or you can save them for later. And another important thing, which I also mentioned when I was covering the conversation during development steps, is annotating conversations and user inputs that users generate when they talk to your assistant. So in Rasa X, you have a tab called NLU Inbox, and this is where all new user inputs will end up, and you can actually also look through them. You can annotate them. So under the hood, Rasa NLU model will make its best guess prediction on what intent should be assigned to specific user inputs. But you can also make changes here and change the annotation of those messages, and you can mark, for example, the examples that were labeled correctly. You can mark them as correct, and they will be added to your overall NLU training data and used to improve your assistant anytime you train the model again. So yeah, so this is a very quick demo of overall Rasa X. You really can get a flavor of it when you share your assistant with real people. When you will have hopefully hundreds and maybe thousands of conversations here, and the more conversations you have, the more you can learn. So again, I just wanted to emphasize that this is a completely free tool for developers to use. So I just would like to encourage people to give it a go and try it out. There is one more feature, which unfortunately, because I'm running Rasa X on my local machine, I can't really show, but I have a slide for it. So if I go back to my slides, I just wanted to cover that with Rasa X, you have the feature of connecting your assistant running on Rasa X to some kind of specific GitHub repository. So this is how you can follow the software development best practices very easily with Rasa X as well, which would allow you to connect to Git server. And then every time you're making a change, for example, annotating new training data, or making changes to your NLU or, let's say, dialog manager model, that every time those changes are first pushed to the Git server, and that you have, let's say, an open pull request so that someone can actually look into those changes and approve them before all of them are pushed into production. And you should always think about tests, and with Rasa X, you can also define specific pipelines for your continuous integration. So what kind of steps, what kind of tests should be executed as you work on the development of your assistant. So for example, those could be training the model and running through test stories to evaluate how good NLU and dialog manager models are, doing some cross-validation on your NLU model, and post them as a pull request for someone to look into and review, and then either approve those changes or maybe ask you to work on some additional improvements. So this is a very quick overview of Rasa X. Here again, I would like to encourage everyone who maybe already tried Rasa open source or Rasa X to share your experience with us, and you can either do that in the comments, or also you can share that on Rasa community forum, or you can shoot me an email. I will share my details as well at the end of my presentation. But as I have mentioned at Rasa, we are building tools for developers, so any feedback is really appreciated and something that we take into consideration for sure. And just a very quick recap of everything that I spoke about today. So conversation-driven development is definitely something that I think every developer should keep in mind when working on their AI assistants, and really looking at how real people talk to your assistant and learning from those conversations is, in my opinion, probably is the only way to go past those quite simple assistants that maybe can handle some context but can't really adapt to real users. So learning from how real people talk is probably the best way to build assistants that can communicate and converse as real users in a specific matter. So yeah, even though conversational AI is hard, conversation-driven development is one of the things that hopefully can help us to make better assistants over time. And it's important to have those conversations. It's important to share the learnings that we have about development of conversational AI to help people that are maybe just entering the field of conversational AI and getting started with developing AI assistants, to make sure that they avoid mistakes and really those hard lessons of working with conversational AI. And at the same time, the main reason why we do speak about conversation-driven development quite vocally at Rasa, and overall any kind of idea that we have about the best ways to build conversational AI assistants, is because we think that having discussions and sharing ideas is really the best way to push this entire field forward and see the progress. So even about conversation-driven development, if there is something that maybe you don't agree, or you have different kind of opinion or additional input, how we could define this development process even better, it's something that I would really appreciate if you would share as well and join those discussions whenever you see them, because it's really, really useful for the entire field. And I think we can learn so much from each other. And here I would like to finish my presentation. So I hope that you learned something and you will take something for your own AI assistance development process. So as I have mentioned, I would really love to hear from you about your experience in working with conversational AI assistants, and also your opinions on conversation-driven development. You can do that either, for example, joining our community forum on forum.rasa.com. It's where you will find also almost entire Rasa team answering questions. So definitely feel free to share your opinions there. And also, if you have any specific questions for me about presentation or anything really related to conversational AI field or AI field overall, feel free to get in touch. Below here is my email, and you can also find me on Twitter. I'm always really happy to talk to anyone who is interested in this field, so feel free to approach me as well. And yeah, so I hope that it was useful, and I would be happy to take any questions if anyone asked anything throughout my presentation.
I'm back. Hey, that was fun. Did you like it?
Oh yeah, I can talk about this for hours. So yeah, definitely.
Well, I guess that when we do what we like, we don't work, right? We just have fun.
Exactly.
So we have many questions and many comments in the comment sessions. I will invite everyone to leave a comment and share with us. We have many, or in like to answer, like even in Portuguese, like Polly de Castro. She say thank you so much. This was great. Ricardo, she said like, wow, this was sensational. Like this was awesome. CDD rocks. Justina, you have a really great way to share. I forgot how to translate that didática, but it's like you make things easier to understand.
I think.
Um, yeah, so we have some questions here, and I would like to invite everyone to leave a comment or just say to Justina, what do you think about the presentation? That would be great. Or just say like, hey, you did an awesome presentation. That would be awesome too. So to start things, I was making some notes about the your presentations. There is a quote from a guy. He's a designer. He runs the biggest UX blog design on Medium. He says like, what we do, we learn from the community and we give back to the community. So in the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned like the way that Rasa achieved the missions, and for me, it's really through the community. Uh, what do you think about that? Like creating things. I mean, the CDD is that, right? You learn from the community, and this is it. How do
Yeah.
you feel about that?
Exactly. No, I totally agree with this statement overall that yeah, you do give things to community and then you get something back for sure. And it's exactly how we see overall how Rasa works. Because and yeah, like at Rasa we do create let's say the first version of whatever product that is. Let's say it was Rasa open source, and when it was especially in the early phases of the development, and even now it still applies, obviously. We add new features. We invite community to test them out first of all before we push them into when we make a release of Rasa. And we ask for feedback, and every time someone comes back to us saying that, you know, this is great or this is not that great, we definitely listen to it and we make improvements. And the same thing is about this learning about how developers build their conversational AI, because when we develop Rasa, and I kind of see this as a nice equivalent for developing a chatbot. When we work on features for Rasa, we do have in mind like how developers will use them and will they like them or not. And then only when we actually give them to real community and for them to actually use it and build something with it, only then we learn, okay, actually this is not really how we anticipated people will use this thing. So it's exactly the same for conversation-driven development. When we imagine how people would build their assistants and we build our software according to that, it's really interesting to see the real process, how real developers build their projects and what kind of issues they face, what kind of challenges, and then based on that, we learn so much, we make so many improvements on Rasa. So it definitely goes both ways. So that's why I think this idea of conversation-driven development is resonates so much with us at Rasa, that we do believe that to build good AI assistants, you do have to learn something from your users. So you give something to the user and you get something back, some kind of knowledge. So
I think that's part of like the open source idea too, right? To build
yeah,
things together with everybody.
exactly. Yeah, because anyone can also be part of the development as well, not only share the feedback, but also open a pull request and contribute something to Rasa, for example, or any open source project.
Well, we have some comments and questions. I wonder if you would like to answer 2 or 3 of them, and then we can
Yeah,
finish live
absolutely.
streaming.
Yeah, and also thank you to everyone who asked questions and left comments. It's really nice. So actually, I would like to answer the question that was posted at the very beginning of our stream from Lapis University, if I understand this correctly. And I think you showed this question on the screen. So
what is the time?
At 4:25 p.m., which probably is my time, Berlin time.
Yeah, let me just find it. I forgot this time zone thing. What would you say? Is that the one?
Yeah, exactly. So what would you say is the main limitation of chatbot landscape today, and what's to come? So I would say that really some, like, the limitation is probably the thinking and the mindset and understanding of like what kind of things you have to do to build good conversational AI. So I definitely see a limitation of let's say lack of training data and how developers go around this lack of training data. So when people just try to generate all possible examples of how people would talk to their assistants manually or auto-generating that, it's a huge limitation to push assistants forward and build better assistants. Also expecting that users will know how to use their assistants, how to provide the information is also quite a big limitation, in my opinion, to push the field of AI assistants forward as well. So definitely there has to be this shift in the mindset of developers. And I'm again kind of covering those 5 levels of assistance. And then when it comes to what's to come, I definitely see assistants just overall getting better at handling conversations, but also being more adaptive to actual user and driving the conversations better. And just like we see all these sites adapting to users, to their preferences, how they interact with applications, I definitely see the same happening for AI assistants as well.
Other question.
I
have plenty.
So I see people being excited about Rasa X as well from Ricardo. So definitely let us know what you think about it after you try it out.
Ricardo is also part of the Lapis group.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. Do you know them? Like, have you talked to them?
I might have. I will have to.
It's a global. Yeah, it's a global product. Many people from around the world.
Yeah. So actually, there is another question from Ricardo at 4:49 my time, which is also kind of the beginning of the.
Which are?
Yes. So which are the key aspects of Rasa open source community work that can help increase the quality of chatbot applications in order to achieve a better perception from the customer citizens? Overall, I would say the best kind of work that we see from our community is, first of all, proposing features. So every time we get a request for, let's say, word embeddings for a specific language that maybe is not that popular, that is not English, for example, it really helps us to add those features to Rasa and make sure that developers in any country really can build AI assistants with Rasa open source. So that is definitely a very, I would say, one of the most valuable contributions that community can make. And then overall, we have people that are contributing different components as well. So any kind of thing that you are building on top of Rasa. So for example, if you are adding, let's say, sentiment analysis component and you would like community to have access to it, we actually have a project which is called Rasa NLU Examples, and anyone can contribute to this project. So this is where we encourage community to share new components that they built on top of Rasa and would like other community members to have access to. Yeah, but really just sharing the feedback and kind of telling us what kind of things you would like to see in Rasa open source would definitely be very helpful for us to work on those features and improve Rasa.
let's go to one last one, and then we run a little bit over the time.
Um, so let me see.
While you're looking for that, I would like to invite the Brazilians that tomorrow we have like a workshop presentation, like at night. It's 6 p.m. It's going to be talking about Power Agents from Microsoft. It's going to be done. It's going to be from Renato. It's a presentation from Renato. He's going to talk about the Power Agents platforms. And next week we're going to have like a debate, like a panel, like with like a non-profit project. But we're still waiting for some info to start in order to announce the event.
Awesome. So one last quick question, which I actually think is really important, and I'm sorry if I could answer all of them, but I will just pick one, which was from Martina, and it was asked at 5:30 my time. It was if I want to collect user conversations through custom action or any other mechanism apart from Rasa X, how to do it. So I think it's really important because I think I also forgot to emphasize that you don't have to use Rasa open source and Rasa X. Like you can definitely use just Rasa open source if you want to. So it's not mandatory. So overall in Rasa, there is a component called tracker, which also keeps track of like everything that is happening in the conversation when the user talks to your assistant. So you can actually have some tracker stores as well, which you can choose. We have tracker stores for SQL databases and some other. You can even build your own custom tracker store wherever you want to store those conversations, and then actually Rasa open source will store those conversations there. And then you can either, for example, if it's a SQL tracker store, you can just query user messages from there and see how the conversations went. So I think that would be probably the easiest way to do that.
Oh, I guess this is it. It was fun.
And yeah, so any other questions that I couldn't take, also I would just encourage to post them on our community forum, or you can just email them to me and I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, that would be great. And you can look for Justina also on LinkedIn, I guess, and say
Yep.
hi or send a message. Well, I guess this is it for today. Next month, we are still talking to a person. Maybe it's going to be about conversational UX and research. Let's see. She said that she's going to look for the data, and whenever we have this presentation ready, we will let the community know. But yeah, this is it for this month. This is our Hello World series. We're talking about conversation-driven development, and I guess what's really fun, we not only talked about it, but we also saw like a live demo. Before we finish, I wonder if you have like any extra thought or any extra invitation, something that you didn't mention during the live streaming that you would like to share with the community?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for listening, and just encourage to join open source communities. If it's Rasa, that would be really amazing. So yeah, I would love to see you in Rasa community, so you can join forum, contribute to open source projects, and just yeah, help us build better software for developers. So
yeah, that's fun. It's a really fun work. All right, so I guess this is it. Say bye to everybody. Bye, ciao.
yeah.
In Brazil, we say ciao. How do we say ciao in? Do you speak Germany? I guess German.
A little bit, so you can say choose.
Choose. All right.
Yeah.
So I guess this is it. Stay here with me. I'm going to finish the live streaming, and bye, everybody. See you next time.
Yeah.